I start?
Yeah, start.
Okay. I'm starting from the beginning. What we have discussed so far in the last interaction was that we are discussing about the culture, society, and the ecological aspect as a basic introduction. And in continuation to that blog, today I will discuss more on the culture, society, and sustainability linkages. And So when you talk about the society, as we know that the human society has been evolving. The human society has evolved towards the more complexity, towards a more heterogeneous in nature. Saying that, so in earlier days, what we have the hunting gathering society where we are more reliable on the natural resources for our subsistence economy. So later on, we improvise ourselves to the agrarian society where we rely on agricultural techniques, agricultural settlements, and the lifestyle has been changes accordingly. And after that, what we come across is the industrial society where the invention of the steam locomotives and the mass production of the industrial products has been started. Now, in the present contemporary, what we are facing is in the information society or the post-industrial society, where we are more reliable on the information technological knowledge. So, in all the form of the changes of the society, what we have observed is that the society is changing or evolving towards the complexity, towards the higher and heterogeneous in nature. And as the societies change, what we observe is that the social norms, values, division of the labor, customs, traditions, and each and everything part of the society are changing also. So the in the earlier the hunting gathering society, where what happened, the social norm or the social the values that we have. So it's a completely different from the so-called the present modern society. So the social values, social norms, and the division of the labor, customs, traditions, they are all changing of and evolving of. This is a nature of society, but we can say that. So as the society changes, what happened, the culture elements are also changes. As we know that culture and the society are the two different sides of the same coin. So they are interdisciplinary, or they are always corresponding together. So what happened, as we know that, so the human has been the it's one of the only animal that has settled in almost all the parts of the world. We find human being settled in cold climatic condition. We find human being settling in the hot climatic condition, warm climatic condition, and different climatic condition. And in other animals, so wide distribution of the organism is wide difficult to find out. But in the human, we can see human are surviving in extreme climatic condition as well as in the moderate climatic condition. So throughout the globe, human globe, or through all over the human globe or all over the world, we find human being settled and living what say in the good condition. So for these things, for these survivability, the adaptation is one of the important thing. So when you talk about adaptation, as we have discussed in the last interaction, biological adaptation is one of the important thing. So as we discussed earlier, so our body features, our body growth or body types changes according to the climatic condition where we survive. So beside this climatic biological adaptation, one of the important thing is the cultural adaptation. So through the cultural adaptation, man can survive in extreme climatic condition where the other organism or the animals fail to survive. We find human being survive in the cold climatic condition because of the culture of the fire. We have the culture of the fire. We have the house pattern, the construction of the houses are also differ to the environment, to the climatic condition where the people are settled. So the house pattern or the construction of the house type, it's very much related with the cultural adaptation. Houses are mainly constructed in such a way to switch to the particular environment where the people are living. So here, let's see what's the cultural adaptation. Cultural adaptation involves reviewing and changing the structure of a program or practice to uh, more appropriately fit the needs and preferences of a particular cultural group or community. So it is the process of adjusting the delivery of mental health services to be consistent with the consumer's culture. So it involves modification of mental health service delivery at the administrative service delivery and the clinical level so that the service or the program is culturally competent. Saying that, so what happened, we have to mentally establish ourselves to adapt to a new cultural setting up when we are exposing. So likewise, you see, maybe the dress or ornaments, maybe the dressing pattern, or maybe the food types or food habits, what the peoples are having. So they differ to the climatic condition, they differ to the environmental setting where the people are living of. So here, but the people, those who are already living at that particular environment, they are already adapted. But someone is going to a new particular environment, totally new particular environment, so they are supposed to be adapt to the new environment so that they can be fit up to the new environment. So here in this context, so the modification of the mental health is very much important, accepting the new cultural element or accepting the new cultural traits. So for that we need a mental preparation. That's what I mean by the cultural adaptation here. In the cultural adaptation also there are a lot of process by step process, but I won't go on that part since this is not part of our context. Say when we go to the new environment, we first time we I mean we really like the what the new things that coming up in our way. But if we live for longer period of time, the new things may not be comfortable with us, with the we're totally different with the environment what we have grown up. Maybe the food habit, or maybe the dressing animal dressing patterns, whatever, any kind of cultural traits. So this has kind of a lot of process involves in the cultural adaptation. So when you talk about the main and environment interaction, so in the adaptation, when you talk about adaptation is the main and environment interaction. So in the sustainability process, when we can see there is always interaction between the main and environment. So when you talk about the main, we mean the culture, because man is a cultural being. So and the environment means here is the nature. So culture has evolved in a natural setting or environment, and the culture itself gives meaning and understanding to the environment around. We see nature or environment as dichotomy to culture. So it's in one way. In another way, both represent dualism, saying that both are interdependent to one another. So that is the debate about the dichotomy and the dualism of man environment interaction. So in the dichotomy, what is saying that these environment and culture are opposite each other, while they are favoring each other. But in another concept, dualism, they are interdependent, so they cannot be separate together. They cannot be, thing as a separate entity. This is a concept. So in the dualism, what we can see, the nature and culture. So in the nature, we see the facts, but these facts are based on the values when we talk about the culturally. And the environment, we see these different non-human biotic or abiotic components in environment. But this biotic and embiotic relationship, it's based on the humanity relationship that's defined by culturally, maybe in the form of religion or made in the form of other social institution. And see, the natures are mainly interested by the natural science or environmental sciences, you can say that. But the culture can be discussed from the anthropological humanities process, but combining together the cultural process or the environmental setup, that will be a main principle for dualism of man environment interaction. So in the main environment interaction, again we can see more deeper in four different way, and the first point can be beliefs and the worldviews. So let's say, so culture can be understood as a systems by which people interpret the world around them. So generally, what happened? We interpret our world through our culture. See, as I we discussed earlier in the last interaction, the cultures, there's no any superior or inferior culture. Cultures are unique in its own way. So we can't compare, our culture is better or their culture is somehow better or something like that. Cultures are unique in its own way. But these cultures are understood, to interpret the world around them. So these meanings and interpretation are most diverse in their linkage to the natural world, and with the most conspicuous links often found in traditional resource-dependent communities. Whereas many traditional communities do not seem to differentiate between nature and culture, many modern society perceive them as separate or even opposing entities. Livelihoods and the practices in another point. As a set of practices, cultures have biodiversity uh, through the selection of plants and animals and the reworking of the whole landscape. Such landscapes have been described as anthropogenic nature, and as their composition is a reflection of local culture and the product of the human history. So what happened, as a kind of practices, we define our biodiversity. So these biodiversities are defined culturally. The kind of plants we are consuming, the kinds of livestock that we are consuming, or the relationship with the livestock. So they are defined by the culture. So this arrangement of the plants and the animals around Earth, it's defined by the culture. As an example, in the Toda community of the Nilgiri Hills, there in for them the cow is one of the important natural resources, biodiversity. Likewise, people living in the hilly area, they also develop such kind of practices. They define their biodiversity. So this is how the livelihood and practices are co-linked together. So in another way, the knowledge about the nature. So if diverse cultural practices and worldviews are central to the management of biological diversity, then the key link between nature and culture is knowledge. Knowledge of nature, variously called traditional, indigenous, local, or ecological, it's accumulated within a society and transferred through cultural modes of transmission, such as stories and narratives. Cultural understanding of the environment not only give rise to sustainable management practices, but also to knowledge of species requirements, ecosystem dynamics, sustainable harvesting, and ecological interaction. This culturally ingrained knowledge can enable people to live within the constraints of their environment in the long term. So saying that what happened in every society there is a cultural knowledge about the environment and ecological. So this knowledge has been transmitted in the society through the oral tradition or through the as a narrative or as a story. So such the indigenous knowledge or such traditional knowledge or such ecological knowledge, they are very much important in sustainably the ecosystem around or in the ecosystem management practices. So in this context I would give an example here from the Manipur society. Say in the Manipur society, what happened in the early days, every household has a bamboo plantation around. So in the bamboo plantation around, what happened, they have the society, the Meitei society have the norms that define on what day the bamboo can be harvested for the domestic work. So there's a particular day that the bamboo can be harvested. It's not that for any time the bamboo can be harvested. So there is a social norm, social belief that people practices. So on a particular day or on a particular day or 3 days in a week, so they are allowed to harvest the bamboo. So such traditional knowledge are very much important in the uh, ecosystem the management practices or in the sustainable harvesting. Lastly, in the point, say norm and institution, the ecological knowledge also give rise to socially embedded norms and regulation. These common human interaction and the behaviors towards the natural environment and have been co-evolved to sustain both people and the nature. They often take the form of common property rules that govern the use of resources from forest to fisheries. These rules define access right and appropriate behaviors and maintain the productivity and diversity of the socio-ecological system, which is ultimately in the best interest of the community. So, In another way, when you talk about the sustainability and the culture, we can see cultural evolution and sustainability as a one way. So we know that in the evolution, adaptation is one of the important process. So likewise, in the cultural evolution, the cultural adaptation is also one of the important process. The adaptation can be in maybe with the environmental or cultural, and are likely to result of differences in ecology, resource, and the people. Cultural similarities can be explained by adaptation of different groups to similar environment and condition, or the cultural variation can also be explained by changing environment and conditions. Since environment and changes we are not predictable, cultures change in many different directions. Cultures that were once similar could become dissimilar with the selective pressure and ecological distress, and the opposite could also happen. Cultures that were once different could become similar. The continual development of culturally transmitted knowledge and skills enable people to thrive in new environments. So cultural evolution that it gives a unique view into the factors that shape the behaviors that ultimately contribute to or hinder the transition to a more sustainable society. So see in another way, let's see the in another a process of cultural evolution, cooperative is one of the way, let's see in this regard. So culture is defined as a socially transmitted information which can include beliefs, values, behaviors, and knowledge, and more specific to the sustainability science, the technology, the lifestyle, the consumption patterns, the norms, the institution, the worldviews that ultimately shape the human impacts on the environment. But these technology, lifestyle, consumption patterns, norms, institution, they are also cultural threat or cultural elements. They are, more or less similar with the sustainable science. So in these cultural approaches to the cultural evolution and sustainability, the cooperation is one of the important parameters. So cooperation is an essential concept in sustainability science because many of the most pressing environmental challenges can be characterized as a social dilemma situation in which the best outcomes for individuals conflicts with the best outcome for the group collectively. So there is a conflict between the individual and the group. So cooperation is for the group, right? So humans tend to favor institutions that solve dilemmas of cooperation. Our large-scale social systems are arguably a product of innate biases that ultimately a product of cultural group selection. So in this regard, the one important theme that comes is the cultural multi-level selection framework, wherein the concept of the social cooperation are applying with the sustainability science. The cultural multi-level selection framework asks when group selection pressures outweigh individual selection pressures, and use that balance as a key indicator for the emergence of cooperation in environmental dilemmas. The cultural multi-level selection framework recognizes the potential for evolutionary pressures to operate on multiple scales simultaneously. This framework is particularly valuable because it can be used to explain the value evolution of cooperation, which is an almost ubiquitous challenge in the context of sustainability and sustainable resource use. So until unless there is a cooperation, we can't control, we can't protect our environment, we can't move towards a sustainable process. So CMLS and related models can also have explained the social transmission of altruistic behavior, resource conservation under climatic instability, the emergence of economic institution, and evolution of sustainable resource management institution. As such, we see cultural evolution as a tool that allows sustainability scientists to incorporate social dynamics into their work, especially the emergence and the spread of sustainable behaviors, practices, norms, and institutions. So environment, and in another way, we can see the interaction with the culture and the environment from the personality point of view. Let's say how is that? So environment, culture, and personality. All the personality traits are set by the culture as well as environment in which an individual has been brought up. My personality is defined by my culture where I have grown up, and someone's personality is depend on the culture where he brought up. So when we talk about the culture, it's the interaction between the culture and environment. So together. So culture is embodied in an individual character, though through inculturation and also the environment which serves the culture of members. And as we have discussed in the last interaction, that cultures are learned, cultures are not transmitted. They are transmitted through learning process. So it is considered as a traits, habits, attitudes, roles, and status, ideas, and values of the members of a society, which is neither good nor bad, but unique in its own culture and environment. As I said earlier, so cultures there is no supreme, that's not superior, they're not inferior. The cultures are unique in its own way. So these, the food, this habit, attitude, traits, role, status. So these are personality that embodied in individuals, they are defined or they are unique to his own culture and environment. So environments have the cultural practices which in turn determines the personality of the group or individuals. At the same time, the culture of a particular region, it's really influential in shaping the personality of the group. The understanding of main environment interaction through the cultural practices expressed in terms of different personality brings about a diversity in culture and personality. So environment responses to development, let's see, we can say, I mean, like, see, mm, as a response to the development process, what are the sustainability response we have adopted in the contemporary society? What we can is that one of the responses is tourism. So tourism can also provide a good contribution in the maintenance and revival of the lifestyles and cultural practices. It can lead to decentralization, poverty reduction, heritage conservation, which is related with the sustainability, and the importance of the national identity and overall sustainable socio-economic lifestyle. It is the best way to conserve natural resources, even though sometimes it is difficult to accept what has been expected. Obviously, it has a plus point and a minus point. The growing cultural diversity and its relation to mankind and other related environment issues brought different expectations from the tourists also. Some of the tourist activities have bringing a boom to the local economy, cultural richness, personality development. But at the same time, there are certain setbacks due to tourism in the local knowledge, cultural systems, and definitely to the physical and social environment. So it's quite possible since the new peoples are coming to the new environment as a tourist, so they may brought their own culture, which uh, as a result of this interaction, the local the culture maybe they the local society they can adopt or they can pick up some of the cultural trend that the tourist has brought, so it bring up new trends to the local culture. But at the same time, this tourist it's bringing a boom to the local economy and the cultural richness. Nowadays even we have come across the rural tourism, or where the people tourists in a particular village to see the village organization and the kind of what say the rural economy to understand things also quite existent in the present days. So the tourism policy should clearly focus on sustainable management of natural and cultural resources to promote local knowledge, practices, and experiences to mitigate the negative impacts of it. So another response is the urban agriculture. The urban agriculture becomes popular and important for providing livelihood strategy, employment and opportunities, and quality food. So urban agriculture is the agricultural practice within or close to urban centers using primarily urban-based resources to provide the urban population with certain services, not necessarily food. It has also a great potential to use composted household waste. As a result, it's a sustainable means of managing the urban experiment. So instead of throwing out the vegetable waste or the kitchen garbage, so household composted waste can be prepared so that it can be utilized in the urban agriculture. The relationship of the urban environment and urban agriculture brought farming in the small courtyards, rooftops, roadsides, public places, river banks, peri-urban, semi-urban area. This is not only giving the provision of nutritional health and the food security to urban dwellers, but also helping in protecting and improving the environmental context of the urban area. So activity of the urban agriculture is to be promoted either in one or different ways to achieve food security as well as a sustainability. So, in the conclusion, I would say there is need for the creation of parks and sanctuary to conserve and protect wild plants and animals, policies and programs for biodiversity conservation, afforestation, soil management, etc. But experts from the different fields focus on different areas to solve the problem. However, there is a need to understand the relationship between the nature of the environment and the development process taking place in a country with the people living over there. The holistic study of any development process, along with environment and factor, as a basic unit, would bring a balanced ecology and the harmony to the society. So awareness and education on environment and its conservation need to be imparted. Today, in Indian, environment education have become compulsory in school and colleges, and its curricula to acquire knowledge, attitude, skills, and participate in the actual real life environment related activities for the conservation and protection of environment from the various problems. So government of India has also implemented various policies related to conservation of environment. Economists need to develop long-term cost-benefit balance in conservation, and there are certain value systems associated with a particular environment or nature in terms of social, cultural, and understanding of the society. So, in any aspect of the development programs, maybe taken up by the government or non-government sector or the other different discipline, we have to consider the value system associated with a particular environment by these people on the basis of social, cultural understanding of the society. So people accept the value of conservation in terms of its belief system embedded in the cultural customs and traditions of a particular culture. So the incorporation of the cultural tradition or cultural belief system in the environmental management system will enhance the linkage between the culture and the sustainability in any environment. So this is the aim for today's interaction. Uh, so can I stop presenting? Can we have a discussion?